Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nikki LaRose, and today I want to show you how I get this sultry bronze glam. This is one of my favorite looks to do for so many reasons. It's glowy, it's sultry, it's more sexy, and it's bronzy. And I love a good bronze tone eye makeup look. So today I'll be showing you step by step how I get this look. If you like this glam, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Leave me a comment if you have any questions on this look, and let's get right into it. So my skin's already prepped, and I'll make sure I link my skincare in the description box. But to add a little pre-glow and a bronzy effect, I'm gonna go in with this Tan Luxe Super Gloss Illuminating Bronzing Drops. This actually has SPF 30 in it, which I love, especially I really gravitate towards something like this in the winter, especially when my skin's a lot fairer and I feel like kind of dull and I just want like a pick-me-up. This is a really great, easy product to pop on your skin before you do your makeup, just to like enhance your glow and give you like that overall like healthy appearance. So I really love this as a skin prep. So taking a couple drops on my painter's palette, I'm gonna apply it with a brush. You can easily use your fingertips for this. I just don't wanna get too much glitter on my fingers ahead of time, so I'm gonna use a brush. So there's really not much technique involved with getting this product on my skin. I'm really just gonna get it on my skin and make sure it's evenly distributed throughout my whole face. So now that's applied, I'm gonna move on to my foundation. For foundation, I'll be using the Dior Forever Skin Glow. This is an amazing foundation. If you want more of a medium coverage, it looks more like skin, but glowy, it's stunning on. And then dipping back in just for a little more product. I'm gonna make sure I blend this down my neck. My neck's been very fair since it's winter. Okay, so now that our foundation is applied, it's gonna look really, really shiny. So while I'm doing my eye makeup, it's gonna actually give it time to dry down just a touch and to kind of self-set before we go in and have to put powder on it. So bear with me, it's gonna look really, really shiny while I'm doing my eye makeup. To prep my eye makeup, I'll be starting with the Soft Matte NARS Concealer in the color Custard. I love this as an eyeshadow base. I use it all the time. So I'll be scooping just a touch of this out. So my brows are already done. So now I'm gonna take this concealer and I'm gonna just place it underneath my brows and then just blend it down towards the rest of my eyelid. And you'll notice this time I'm not gonna cover my entire eyelid. So I'm really just getting up into the crease and then leaving my eyelid bare. And that's just because I'm not trying to cancel out all the pigmentation in my eyelid, because I'm just gonna go in and create like a smoky or bronzy look anyway. So the pigmentation on my eyelid that's natural is actually gonna work in my favor. And then switching to a blending brush, I'm just gonna start to stipple that product in and blend out the edges. This is also a great technique too if you're trying to grow out your brows and you have like those sparse brows that grow in, like in the in-between stages of growing out your brow. This is a great way to camouflage them and lay them down and just cover them up like they don't exist. Moving on to my first eyeshadow color. This is gonna be a cream eyeshadow. This is like a ride or die product and color that I keep in my kit. It's so beautiful on. It's from Chanel. It's the color Undertone, and it's just this beautiful, super natural, super neutral brown. I'll be using the 234 Luxe Smokey Shader Brush from Zoeva. This is a great brush if you're trying to pack on any product. I especially love this kind of brush for creams. Before it has a chance to dry down too much, I'm going to blend it out with the Zoeva 224 Luxe Soft Definer. This is just a smaller blending brush, which is really going to get in there and get the job done. And then blending it out. For this look, I'm busting out one of my all-time favorite palettes. This one's from Pat McGrath Labs. It's the Mothership 5 palette. And this has so many beautiful, perfect bronzy shades in it, which is why I'm gonna use it. The first shade I'll be dipping into is this beautiful rich brown shade, and I'll be just blending this into my crease. When I'm applying this shade, I'm really using it to create more depth and like a smokier effect. And I'm focusing on tucking it into my crease. So I'm not like blending it too far all over the place. I'm really just tucking it into that crease and creating that depth in there. So now I'm gonna start to layer two of the colors in the palette on top of my eyelid with my fingertip and then blend it into my crease. So I'm gonna layer this shade on top of this one. Okay, so I'll be taking that first bronzy color and I'll be applying it with my fingertip and just packing it on my eyelid. So going in with a second layer, same color. The color payoff with this shadow, especially when it's applied with your fingertip, is just amazing. Like, it's such a great payoff, which is why I'm putting out my fingertips, and then I'll just kind of blend out where I need it or where I feel is necessary. But ultimately I want like the most color payoff and pigment, so that's why I'm using my fingertip. I'll grab my blending brush and just start to blend this just a little more into my crease. I think the great thing about like bronzy, more smoky looks like this is they don't have to be like super precise, super like cut and dry. They could be more fun and playful and a little more messy. Honestly, I think they look better the messier, well, not that messy, but like the messier they are and like less precise. I think they look more sultry and sexy. So don't be afraid to have fun with it and not overthink it too much. Moving on to my second shade, I'm going to layer that just directly on top. And the reason why I'm layering these two is I just like creating more depth with these shadows, especially with a bronzy look. I think that having like different tones of bronzy colors really just are flattering. So like this one, for example, that I'm layering on top of that first one is a little more like caramelly and warm. So it kind of just balances out that cooler one that we put on beforehand. And then I'm gonna blend it out. To get more contrast and more of like a sultry, sexy look, I'll be grabbing a black eyeliner instead of what you would probably typically expect me to grab, which is a brown liner. And I'll be using this to tightline my top lash line, smoke out my bottom lash line just a little bit, and also I'll be lining the top as well, just a little bit. And then taking my eyeliner and switching my angle to more of like a flat, straight across angle, I'm gonna just tight line my top lash line, but on the outside. And so, I'm just gonna like tuck this as close to my lash line as possible to create more depth and more of like a smoky effect. Next, I'm dipping into the darkest matte brown in the palette, and I'll be using that with a small flat shading brush. This one's from Morphe. It's the Makeup by Ariel collaboration set. This is a great blending brush. You see me use it all the time, I'm sure by now. But I'm gonna use this just to blend out that black eyeliner and to create that smoky effect. I'm gonna start on my bottom lash line first and then work my way up. And it's gonna look messy. It's gonna look like it's not perfect. That's kind of the point, like I mentioned earlier, so bear with me. Now I'm gonna blend out the top. Okay, so the reason why I'm using my nail to just very gently drag my liner out is because I want a very toned down, subtle cat eye effect with this bronzy eye makeup look. If you know me and you watch my tutorials, you know that I love a cat eye. It's kind of like my thing. It's one of my favorite looks to do. So I'm gonna do just a little baby one. I'm not gonna take the focus away from this eye makeup look. It's just gonna kind of enhance it, if that makes sense. Moving on to the other side. And then going back to blend it out. Switching to a pencil brush, I'll be using this to apply that first matte brown shade. So I'm layering these two matte brown shadows on top of my black eyeliner, just again to create more depth and more interest in this eye, just like I did with those two shimmery brown shades. It's the same idea. Now that my eye makeup is blended out, I'm going to take that same pencil and I'm going to use this to tightline my top lash line. Next, I'll be applying 1 to 2 coats of this Buxom Extrovert Mascara and then get into some individual lashes. So I've talked about this before, but the reason why I always do a coat or 2 of mascara before I do either individual lashes or any strip lashes is it really just gives them kind of like a base to lay on top of, if that makes sense. So it's almost like you're creating more of a shelf. So when you're applying them on top of your lashes, they have more of a, like I said, like a shelf to lay on top of. So it's a lot easier to apply them. So I get asked for tips all the time on how to apply individual lashes or how to apply like even the trio lashes or strip lashes. And that's one of my best tips, is to make sure you lay that groundwork down first and then you go in with the individuals or the strip lashes. It'll make it so much easier. So for lashes, these are actually one of my all-time favorite lashes, but I can never find these in stock. So I don't know, it was my lucky day I got them. They're so hard to find. They're beautiful on. They're the Ardell Mega Flare. They're kind of like a cluster of individuals. So they're really flared out. One almost gives you the effect of 3, if that makes sense, because they are so flared. So anyway, they're beautiful on, you'll see. Using one of my favorite lash glues, this one is super strong, but it's gentle on your eyelashes, which is why I like it so much. It's the Duo Brush On Adhesive with vitamins. Switching over to a different length and a different lash. I'm sorry, these are ones that I've mentioned before. They're a professional brand called Mondo Studio. So different brand, but you can easily just do Ardell individuals in medium length. That's just the whole point. I'm just switching to a different length to add a little more like contrast between the lashes. So grabbing a couple of these, I'll be placing them more towards the outer portion of my eye. Okay, individuals are totally done on this side. Moving on to this eye. Moving on to my under eyes, I'll be using the NARS Radiant Creamy Color Corrector. This is in the shade medium, so it's just enough color that it's going to counteract and balance out that dark pigmentation that I have. And then I'm gonna go with my concealer and it's gonna be more of a brightened effect. So I'm just gonna take a little bit on top of my painter's palette. So I'm really just gonna use this product just where I have the darkest amount of pigmentation, which is really just this area right here. I don't need it all the way around. I'm just gonna start it in this spot. And then you'll see I'm gonna apply it initially here and then just kind of blend it out lightly because I don't want it to be a thick layer under my concealer. I just want it to be enough to balance out and to color correct that pigmentation. And now just kind of blending it out so there's no obvious, you know, beginning and end to this product. So just kind of blending out the edges of it. So moving on to my concealer, this is the Instant Age Rewind Eraser. It's a multi-use concealer. This is from Maybelline. This is a great drugstore concealer. I've used it in a couple other tutorials. I love this concealer. So when I'm applying my concealer, I really love to line it up on the side of my nose, and that's just gonna create a really nice natural contour for my nose. And I'll have to go in with a lot less product like, you know, bronzers or like cream contour when I'm actually getting to that area, because I've almost pre-contoured it, if that makes sense. So it's like reverse contouring with a highlighter, which I've talked about before. It's a really great technique. So that's the reason why I bring it up so close to the side of my nose. It's just to bring out my shape initially before I even go in with like a cream contour or a powder contour. Taking the same concealer, I'm going to use this to just lightly highlight in between my brows. A little bit on my chin. I'm going to take whatever's left over on my brush. I'm going to give my lower half of my face a little lift up. So using my bottom lip as almost like a guide as to where to apply this, I'm gonna line it up with my bottom lip. And then it doesn't have to be crazy precise. You get the idea. And so before this dries down too much, I am gonna go in and just very lightly blend it with a beauty sponge. It's gonna look really subtle on camera, but trust me, in person, it is definitely impactful. It's just like a very subtle lift up. So taking my damp beauty sponge, I'm gonna start to press that in. Now I'm gonna take a fluffy brush and just very lightly blend out the edges of my concealer under my eye, and then I'm gonna let it totally dry down and self-set before I completely buff it in and set it down with powder. So taking more of my concealer, I'm gonna highlight above my top lip and just under my nose, where, as you can see, like there's a lot of shadow going on from my nose. So I'm just trying to bring light back to that spot, which is why I'm highlighting it. Next up, I'm gonna be warming up my skin with a cream bronzer. This one's from Fenty Beauty in the color Mocha. So like I've mentioned before, I'm not really a huge fan of contouring my face. I just like to warm it up, which is what I'm gonna do with this product. So I'm gonna hit basically straight across my forehead. Doesn't have to be super precise because we're gonna blend it out. And then for my cheeks, I'm gonna go above where you would naturally contour, which is the hollow. I'm taking it just above it, and it's basically like the side of my cheekbone, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like where you would place your blush. Instead, I'm gonna place my contour slash bronzer there because I want more of a lifted effect I've talked about this in previous tutorials as well. It's just more of like a look that I enjoy in myself, so that's why I like to bring it up further. And then just a little bit on my nose. It's gonna look kind of funky. So taking a smaller blending brush, I'm gonna blend out my nose. I'm focusing the cream bronzer more on the bottom of my nose, like meaning I'm applying it initially there and then I'm just very gently blending it upward. I'm not like applying an actual amount further up my nose because I'm not trying to narrow it too much. I just want to kind of balance it out and bring some warmth to it. And then just go straight across. It's gonna look really natural. And then before I go in and I blend out my cream bronzer, I'm gonna go back to my under eye concealer and I'm gonna bring out that contour with more highlighter. Switching to a Real Techniques contour brush. I love this brush for blending out cream products in any formula like highlighter, blush, contour. It's so good, it makes it so easy. So I'll be using this and I'm gonna start to almost tap it in and then blend it out. My contour is done, it's blended, so now it's time to set my under eye concealer finally. It's had so much time to really dry down and self-set, which I love, especially for me. I want to maintain all my coverage under my eye like I've talked about before, so by letting it dry down and self-set before you go in with powder, you get even more coverage. So now I'm going in with the Laura Mercier translucent powder. I'll be taking a large powder puff and just folding it in half. This one's from a beauty supply store. You can find them online as well. I think Amazon even carries these. So I'll be taking that and working that powder into my powder puff, basically till you don't see it in your hand anymore. That's when you know it's blended enough into the powder puff. Okay, so now that's worked in, I'm gonna keep it folded and I'm gonna start to press this under my eye to set my concealer. Then bringing it up towards my temple, and then on the side of my smile lines, onto my chin. I'll also be taking this, I'll be just very lightly baking the side of my nose, and again, you'll notice that like that's really bringing out that little amount of contour that we did apply on the nose. It's really gonna bring it out and help define it and brighten this area. Looking straight into my mirror, I'm gonna make sure this lines up nice and symmetrically. I'll be powdering just where I placed that concealer earlier along the side of my mouth and up towards my cheeks, just to really highlight and give my face, once again, like that lift up. And then taking whatever's left over, I'm gonna start to press this in the center of my forehead. Switching to a larger fluffy brush, I'm gonna dust off that baking powder. And now I'm gonna finally go in with my beauty sponge and just lightly tap in and blend that nose highlight. And then to set that highlight, I'm gonna be switching to a small flat brush. Taking that same Laura Mercier powder, I'm gonna use this to set that concealer. And while that's marinating, I'm gonna take that same fluffy brush and I'll be dipping into one of my favorite bronzers. This one is so like worn and torn. You can see like the label is totally worn off. It's the Hourglass Radiant Bronze in Light. So I'll be using this bronzer just to warm up my skin a little more and also to set the areas that we use that cream bronzer, just so it locks it down and it really enhances it, because it's all about layers in makeup. Before I move on to blush, I'm gonna go back into my Pat McGrath palette and then that small flat shading brush, and I'm just going to really lightly layer 2 of the shimmery eyeshadows on my bottom lash line. So with this lighter one, I'm bringing it further down than the rest of the bottom lash line colors, just to add a little more depth and a little more of a sultry effect, going with our theme. Finishing touches on the eye makeup will be one more coat of mascara, and this time on the bottom lash line as well. Next up, highlighter. I'll be using the Dior Backstage Glow Face Palette in Pure Gold. I think this one's limited edition, but I don't know, I've heard conflicting things. I think it is still available. If it's not available, there's so many others from Dior that are just as gorgeous. I love these highlighting palettes. They're so pretty on. So taking a smaller blending brush, this one's from Zoeva, I'll be using this to highlight. This highlighter is super pigmented, so I'm really just gonna tap it on and I'm gonna blend it out with a different brush. It just makes it look more like it's a part of my skin and not like it's just sitting on top. So it's just a great technique to really like work these kind of powder highlighters into the skin rather than just kind of applying them and letting them sit on the surface. So same brush, I'm gonna squeeze it so it's a little bit thinner and dip it into the same highlighter. I'm gonna use this to dust off that powder on the top of my nose and then also at the same time replace it with the highlighter. And then same technique. Next up is blush. I'll be using, again, one of my favorites. This one is from Laura Mercier and it's in the color Chai. Next on lips, I'll be using one of my favorites. This is from KKW Beauty. It's the 1.5 lip liner. This is a great nude lip liner. Moving on to lipstick, I'll be taking from my depotted lipstick palette that I made. I'll be using the color from Chantecaille. This is the color Patience. It's a beautiful like pinky nude with a glossy finish. I love this formula. It's so comfortable on. It almost feels like you're wearing like a tinted lip balm. Highly recommend their lipsticks. They just are such nice formulas. To set my makeup, I'll be using the Jouer Hydrate and Repair Moisture Mist. This one's new. This is really nice, even as like a pre-makeup, pre-skincare skin prep, or of course how I'm gonna use it now, which is going to be to set my makeup. So here's my finished look. This is my Sultry Bronze Glam. This kind of makeup look is everything I love about makeup wrapped into one. It's more sexy, the eyes are more sultry and a little more messy and playful. The skin's more glowy but still perfected with a nude lip. I mean, this is like one of my favorite looks. I hope you love this tutorial. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram for more makeup inspiration. I'm at Makeup by Nikki LaRose, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.